I never thought we'd see the day when the Buell Super Cruiser has actually entered production, because for the longest time it's been one of those motorcycles that has kind of haunted internet discussion about motorcycles, specifically American bikes, because it represents something that Harley and Indian either don't want to do or they're incapable of doing by creating some beastly liquid-cooled V-twin muscle bike that can hang with the likes of a KTM Super Duke or an MT-10. It's packing an 1190cc V-twin, putting down 175 horsepower, 94 foot-pounds of torque, and weighs in at 485 pounds. Now, according to the website, that number is wet with no fuel. Their fuel tank is 4 gallons, and if you ask Google, a gallon of gas weighs on the high end 6.5 pounds, which is 26 pounds of gas in the gas tank, which makes it a 511-pound motorcycle. That is still seriously lightweight for an American cruiser. Now, there's actually not a ton of information out there about the Super Cruiser, at least in terms of ride reviews. I'm gonna link to 2 down below. One is from Blockhead, who was at Daytona and saw the bike and rode it in person. And then the other is from NBT Clothing, who rode the bike at Sturgis, although NBT does have a business relationship with Buell. They make gear specifically with Buell branding on it, and so you may want to caveat that ride slightly. Beyond that, there's not a lot of technology on this motorcycle. It has no ABS, it has no rider modes, it has no cruise control, and it has a couple of levels of traction control help bringing that rear wheel back in line if you get a little too zesty. There are going to be plenty of people out there who see this as the rider's motorcycle, a pure experience, and they're going to love it. For me, I love that my Aprilia Tuono with 140 horsepower has nothing between me and the ground but a cable throttle. However, this is not but a sack of flesh and goo that did not get a full 8 hours of sleep last night. And if I'm out there riding a 175 horsepower motorcycle and I make a mistake, it would be nice to know that there's something looking out for me just in case. And my Super Duke can do that. The Super Cruiser can't. Aside from some of those obvious concerns, another one that people are going to bring up is, well, why is this motorcycle $26,000 if it doesn't have any of this technology on it? They may also see that price tag and then be taken aback when they look at photos of the bike and see something that looks kinda cobbled together. From plenty of the photos and videos that you see online, there's a lot of exposed cables and some stuff that looks like it was just slapped on there from some of the other motorcycles in Buell's lineup. One of the reasons I think that explains some of this is the story I've heard was when they contacted Roland Sands to help design this motorcycle, they gave him the goal of using as many off-the-shelf Buell components as humanly possible. And then when you take a look at Roland's V1 design and the production V3, you can draw a direct line between these two motorcycles. Sure, there are definitely some differences. It's got a giant exhaust off the back now, and it doesn't have the Buell single disc up front, which we'll talk about in a second, but the bike is still more or less the same. To play devil's advocate here, this is going to help them reduce a lot of production costs, as well as shrink the timeline. To give you an idea of the production timeline that we're talking about here, the bike was officially unveiled in 2023, and the version 3 that has entered production went into production in 2025, which means that in less than 3 years, they went from concept to production. That's insane. However, you'd expect some of those savings to be passed on to the customer, and maybe they were. Maybe the bike was originally over $30,000 and 26 grand is a steal, I don't know. But that's where we get into the motorcycle that we're seeing in the photos. The bike that I'm seeing does not look like a $26,000 bike. It definitely feels like a bike that should be selling around 20 grand. And this is where we have to put the Super Cruiser in context with other motorcycles in the category. And this is gonna piss some people off, but I have to say it, there is not a single other American motorcycle that can throw down with the Super Cruiser. I'm sorry, I don't care what performance mods you've added to your motorcycle, it out of the box cannot throw down with the Super Cruiser. It just can't. That means that we have to look at the likes of Triumph and Ducati, and I'm gonna single out the Diavel because that's more of the sporty one. The Rocket 3 is really in its own category of, stupid brick-chewing motorcycle that wants to go straight and go fast. I'm not saying that the Rocket 3 is bad, but it almost exclusively uses 4-letter words. I'm gonna assume that the Buell is a little bit more sophisticated and probably throws down more directly with the Diavel. That bike is packing an 1158cc V4 that's putting down 168 horsepower, 93 foot-pounds of torque, and weighs in at 492 pounds. That means that we can finally say there is an American cruiser that makes more power than an Italian superbike. Finally. Now I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this video really quick to bring you a word from today's sponsor, Calimoto. I normally hate using motorcycle rider focused phone apps, but this one is different because it is one of the best ways for me to plan and share routes with my buddies. Maybe this makes me sound like kind of an old fogey, but I hate trying to program a route on my phone. It always takes way longer than it needs to. So Calimoto actually has a full desktop app that you can use to set up the exact route that you want, and they highlight some of the most twisty roads around you. Once you're done with it on the computer, you save it and you can share it with your buddies, or it just appears right in your phone through your saved routes. It is so much easier than trying to plan and share a ride through Google Maps, which is how I used to do it before I've used Calimoto. Also, if you're just out there riding around and you find a cool road, you can record your rides and save it for later. If any of this sounds good to you, click that link down in the description below where you can get yourself 30 days off a free trial, or you can get 10% off a yearly subscription. Both of those codes are down there in the description, and let's get back to it. The Super Cruiser is even capable of leaning harder. They claim 50 degrees of lean to the Diavel's 41. I'm sure that's really gonna make a difference out on the street, but it's worth pointing out. The Diavel is $27,995 to the Super Cruiser's $25,900. The thing that's really gonna separate these two motorcycles is the technology on board and the build quality. One thing you absolutely cannot say about the Diavel is that it was slapped together with parts that were already sitting around in the factory. That bike is bespoke. It is specifically designed to be the most aggressive muscle cruiser they could build, and it's backed up by one of the most sophisticated tech packages they could throw at it. By comparison, the Super Cruiser is a production motorcycle that has this vibe of being built in some guy's garage. So can I stand here and tell you that I think that the Super Cruiser justifies its $26,000 price tag? And the answer is no. However, that's not gonna stop me from wanting to walk through that door right there and go slap down my $1,000 to put a deposit on this bike. I'm standing in front of my VMAX here for a very deliberate reason. I took a long time to build this into what I think is the ideal version of an aggressive muscle bike. Sure, we have a fast motor, but that's only part of the story. You need a motorcycle built around it that can handle the twisties and stop as well as it goes. There are plenty of people out there who write the Gen 1 VMAX off as a motorcycle that is a one-trick pony built to go straight, and those people are wrong. The bones that this bike are built on are actually surprisingly good, and it's a great analog for the cruisers that we have coming out today. We have a bunch of great bikes that are built to handle, but hampered by stupid design decisions. Specifically, I'm talking about 19-inch front ends, ass-dragging rear ends, and brakes that are not commensurate with the power of the bike they're trying to stop. That's why I put Superbike rims on this bike. That's why I upgraded the brakes and the suspension. And underneath a bike that I would genuinely say is too dangerous to ride was this gem of a bike hampered by stupid choices. So many modern cruisers are making these same mistakes 30 years later. And for the first time, we have an American cruiser that's willing to buck those trends. The Super Cruiser is one of those bikes that I don't think is gonna sell very well. I don't think it's for everybody. You have to be a maniac to want that kind of bike, but I am that kind of maniac. It has taken all of the criticisms that I've levied at Harley Davidson for years and Indian for like 3 weeks now because I recently rediscovered that Indian exists, and it fixes them in one fell swoop. It's got the 17-inch rims that open up super bike tire options. It's got proper brakes, proper suspension, and a proper seating position. I forgot to mention this in the garage, but one of the things that I'm actually kind of excited about is the fact that this motorcycle has ditched the single Buell giant rotor. I know that that's something that's iconic to the brand,
But by going to the standard dual disc setup that you see on every sport bike everywhere, it means that you have a much wider aftermarket. There's so many more options available for you instantly. You can get your rotors from Lindell Brakes or Spiegler or wherever you want to get them. And then if you wanted to upgrade your calipers, that's something that's more easily done now. You can get those fancy vented calipers that you see on big race bikes or whatever if you wanted to extract the most performance you can out of your braking system. It's definitely one of those little things that actually feels to me like Buell thought more about the bike's performance and less about honoring their heritage, which is something that I hear from all of these big cruiser companies, and it drives me fucking nuts. If something doesn't do what you need it to do, or it's holding the product back, get rid of it. Do something different. And it seems like Buell's doing that.
However, I think if they were able to sell this bike for $20,000, then they would instantly overtake the performance cruiser marketplace overnight. You gotta remember, this is the market segment where guys are buying a $20,000 motorcycle and then dumping another $20,000 worth of parts into it to make it perform almost as good as a Super Cruiser would right out of the box. And then when you think power to weight ratio, there's no American cruiser that's gonna be able to even touch this thing. Not even a King of the Baggers bike. But again, I haven't ridden this motorcycle, so maybe I'm wrong. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'm gonna go try desperately to not put my $1,000 down on one. I really wanna buy a Super Cruiser. I'm actually contemplating selling 3 or 4 different bikes and buying one. Should I buy a Super Cruiser? Let me know down below. Catch you guys later.